Hello and welcome to Catamount Community Connection. I'm Brian Collamore, and this must mean it's Sunday. And we have a weekly show, a 1-hour show. We call it Catamount Community Connection because we like to speak with different folks from the community, business, professional, nonprofit, and yes, political. Our program is brought to you by the Rutland County Agricultural Society, which has brought you the Vermont State Fair at Rutland since 1846, just completed. Well, not just. It's back in August now. The 178th Fair, very well attended. And on behalf of the Rutland County Agricultural Society, thank you everyone who attended this year. And yeah, we're already looking forward to the 179th Vermont State Fair at Rutland. That'll be next August 2025. Very happy to welcome back someone who had been with us. Gosh, it's been a few months. Tom Leypoldt from the PEGTV crew. And always great to have you speaking with us, Tom. What's new with you?
Hi, Brian. It's always a pleasure, and I think it's actually almost been a year. I was here almost a year ago.
Oh, my gosh.
It goes by fast.
It sure does. It sure does. I want to talk about some of the things that folks will be able to see coming up. One of them is the election coverage, which will be on November 5th, I assume, right, that night.
Right.
And unfortunately, because we're recording this prior to the Halloween parade, we won't have a chance to sort of pre-promote it. It happened last night by the time you hear this show. So I don't know whether there might have been any great surprises or anything like that last night. But that must be a really almost all hands on deck difficult thing to staff and to kind of figure out how to cover.
It really is. We are all excited for it. Actually, the crew is there getting ready for it now. There's a lot of moving parts in the Halloween parade because we have to contact the police department, make sure we have the spot on the street. We have to make sure the signal's working properly. So it is all hands on deck. We have the crew on location, and we have a member of the staff that's at the station making sure the streams are working well, because we like to stream it live too for the folks that aren't in the area. There's a lot of folks that grew up in Rutland. Wherever they live, they still like to click it and watch it. So we do everything we can to get it out to the most people possible. And of course, I looked at the weather map today, and now is the only day that's got rain, and it is Saturday. So hopefully that doesn't come true.
Yeah, hopefully by the time you hear this, we will have completed. And I can't remember how many years. How many years is the parade?
I think we're in the 60s, in the low 60s.
Okay.
Yeah.
How did you come to decide? Because you're at the corner of Strong's and Wales. Did someone scope that out ahead of time years ago? Because you've been there for a while and figured this must be the greatest place of all to do it.
Yeah, it's been, I'd say maybe 10 years we've been in front of Wales Street, and we did talk about that because we used to be at the corner of West and Merchants.
That's right.
And back then, the streetlights emitted a weird red color.
Oh, yeah.
And of course, that's changed now, but back in the day, we're like, well, how do we get rid of that red tint? And then we also decided that corner of Wales and Strong's would be a good spot because you actually see the floats coming head on, and then you kind of get them turning. So it's a good vantage point for us because they turn up Wales right in front of us. So you get kind of a multi-dimensional view of what's going by without having to maneuver too much. And it's closer to the station, too. So if we forget a adapter or something, it's easy to send somebody back and get one. So,
is that a very popular assignment? Like, do people say, I want to do it, I want to do it, I want to do it? Who decides who does what?
Well, I talk to the staff, and we tend to rotate. Everybody likes to rotate. And, Chelsea may want to be the technical director one year, and Rich will run camera, and Jim will be back at the station, and Nancy goes somewhere and watches it on TV, and she'll text us to make sure, like, yeah, everything looks good and sounds good. So she kind of monitors. We like to rotate. And this year I'll be back co-hosting with Stephanie Wilson. That seems to be a popular gig because Stephanie's, got proper diction and reads everything properly, and I'm just a foil. So people tend to like that arrangement.
Yeah. No, I've enjoyed it. I've been in it most of the years that I've been in Rutland, now 50. But on occasion, I'll go back and look at it because you guys archive everything, and it's kind of fun to because when you're in the parade, it's kind of like what was the old line? If you're in the dog race, you see the tail of the dog ahead of you and maybe the one behind you, but that's all you ever see. You don't ever see the parade.
Right. And that's the same if you're involved in a production, as you know, you're there, but you really don't get to watch it and enjoy it the way a regular spectator does, because, you know, you got technical things on your mind and you're always looking around to make sure everything's going well. And but it's a nice event to be part of, and I'm glad that I get to have a front row seat to it.
Yeah.
It's kind of neat.
This goes back, of course, to I think the late 60s. So you're right. It's probably all of 60 some odd years. Tom Fagan, I think, was the person that came up with the idea for the Halloween parade first. And he was the driving force behind it. It probably started off with a very small amount of people involved. But over the years, it's gotten bigger and bigger and bigger. And it's funny when you tell people about it that are not from the area that you literally could have 10,000 people watching this parade. They find it hard to believe. But gol darn it, Rutland just loves the Halloween parade. They really do.
It really has taken on a cult phenomenon. And I think now, especially with the Batman statue commemorating Tom Fagan, I really think it's become a worldwide thing. You know, we get feedback from other countries sometimes. They'll leave comments on the YouTube channel or they'll send us an email. It's like, I'm really pleased that I get to watch this in a different country, and I'm glad that you guys do it. And I have a comic book at home that my sister bought me when I was in high school that actually depicts a portion of the Rutland Halloween parade, and Tom Fagan's in it.
Right.
So it's really neat to have that kind of a background to it. It really has a big following, and I was happy to be part of the statue unveiling. They asked me to say a few words, which was a big thing for me to be part. I remember my dad taking me to it when I was a little kid, and I'd always tell him, make sure you get a picture of Batman. And I still have one of those pictures today. And
yeah. Very few years, I guess there were a few, was it canceled because of the weather. I remember one year, this had to go back into the 80s, the wind was a problem, and it got really cold, and it was just it was not a good night to be out. And I think they did, I say cancel, they postponed it until a different day. But for the most part, it's rain or shine, it happens.
Right. PEGTV is there no matter what, you know, but whatever the rec decides to do. And I think during COVID, it actually got canceled 2 years in a row. One for COVID, and the second year was because the weather was bad. And when they moved it to the next night, a lot of participants dropped out because they just couldn't do it. And it the rec said, it's not going to be worth it. But PEGTV is going to be there no matter what. If the parade is happening, we're gonna be there. So.
We're talking to Tom Leypoldt from PEGTV, and again, we're recording this prior to the Halloween parade, even though by the time you hear this, the parade will have happened last night. So it's kind of hard for us to give you a wrap-up on it because it hasn't happened yet. But I know, I think I read in the Rutland Herald that there were 20 more entries in the parade this year than the year before, whatever. So it's still growing, if you will.
Yeah, it's the creativity in it is amazing, and I think that draws people to it because some of them you would think, wow, that could be in the Macy's Day Parade. They spent a lot of time on that. It's very detailed, and it's just a fun event to get out. And it's a good way for your nonprofit to get recognized. If your nonprofit builds a float and wins a prize, that's publicity for your nonprofit or anybody. It's just a great event, and there have been years, like you said, where those crowds have been 7 people deep, especially if it's a beautiful day out. It's just a fun thing. If I had my wish, I would want the parade to start during the daylight and have it gradually get darker as the parade progresses. But I've run that by the rec center a few times, and so far, no luck.
Well, I have my own personal request of the rec department. I haven't made it official, but politicians, we traditionally put an entry in. I'm on one side of the political aisle, and the other side as well does their thing. And it's kind of like one of those things, well, geez, if they do it, we better be doing it because we don't want to be left out of this. But I really wish that at some point the rec department, which is in charge, and they have the authority over the Halloween parade, they would decide not to have any politicians in the parade. I'm still at a loss to have anybody explain to me how we fit in to the Halloween parade. I don't get it. I don't. It just isn't my thing, I guess. I love the Halloween parade, but not as a politician. I would do something else. But anyway, this year we're both going to have entries, I'm pretty sure, in the parade, and that's the way it is. But that would be my request for the rec department, because I still I don't know what business we have being in it. I really don't.
Well, I think if you can follow the theme, maybe if you dress up as something or someone and follow the theme, I think anybody that wants to should be in it. But I can understand the rec wanting to keep politics out of it and wanting to keep advertising out of it and just have it be a fun event.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so we're talking about the Halloween parade, and I don't know if there's anything in the interim between that and election night, but let's talk about that a little bit. And again, I will stay as apolitical as I can on this. I know that you'll have your anchors back at the station, and you'll start coverage probably 7-ish?
Yeah, we wait till the polls close, and then we'll send the crew out to as many polls as we can, collect the data at each poll, and get it back to the station as quickly as possible. And then our host, of course, Tom Donahue, the CEO of Brock, has been hosting that for more than, 10, 15 years now. And we go live as soon as we have data, and then Tom will read the results live on the air. And sometimes it takes a poll a little longer to calculate the numbers, so we may be slow. And we also encourage other towns that we don't get to, because we just do the wards in Rutland. So any other town that has data that they want read on the air, we encourage them to get it to us as quickly as possible.
Of course, I've been involved with radio for many years here in Rutland, and as things change, unfortunately, radio doesn't play a part in election coverage anymore. I don't even know when we did our last election coverage, but again, it would, just like with you guys, I'm sure, it used to be everybody in the station would be expected to be there that night, and you'd run around to the polls and get the results and call back in, go on live if you could. But we had anchors back here, gosh, the years with Ted Pendleton from our news director. Alex Dunn would host the show as well. But boy, we haven't done that in a long, long time. It just it isn't anything that we do anymore, unfortunately, because I think it really does leave a vacuum. And thank goodness for PEGTV, because I don't think anybody else that I know of does instantaneous results. So I'm sure that wherever the Democrats gather that night, they'll be watching, and I know the Republicans, where we're going to gather, will be watching it as well, and everybody will be either. Well, not either. Maybe there'll be a combination of cheers or groans, right, depending on what's announced. But it's kind of fun.
Yeah, it is fun, and we like being part of the action, and we invite other media into the station. It's certainly not an exclusive thing. We'll share data. Nina Keck sometimes will join us at the studio, and she has a microphone right in the building, so we'll hand her our data, and she'll read it on Vermont Public. We invite the Rutland Herald. We'll invite other ABC News and NBC5 sometimes will stop in. And we also invite walk-on guests. So any member of any party wants to come on and talk during the election coverage when there's a break, we certainly welcome that. It has gotten a little tougher over the years because you do need boots on the ground, obviously, to go to the polls. And the climate today, a lot of the doors are locked. So we have to wait until you used to be able to just walk right in and talk to somebody. Sure. And because of the climate today, you can't always do that. So we appreciate the help from the wards, because they understand it. It helps them. If they can get the information out, it helps them in the next day because they don't get as many phone calls. So.
Yeah. So Tom will be the sole anchor?
Yeah, I put him on the spot during our annual meeting, so he couldn't say no to me because I asked him right in front of everybody.
Good.
And he's good at it, and he does it every year. He's got a lot of experience. He's very familiar with local politics, so he's good. Excellent choice, and I'm sure we'll be glued to the TV set that night to see what the results are. It's a little different these days than, I guess everything's a little different these days, with the ability for people to vote ahead of time. With the mail-in ballots, and I don't know whether that makes it, well, I guess it would make it easier to count because you can run those through. There's a certain period of time before the polls close where they can run all the absentee or the mail-in ballots. So they're already sort of ahead of the game at that point, and I don't know what percentage of people voted ahead of time or will have voted by then. I'm guessing it'll probably be 25-30% of the electorate will have already cast a ballot. So that means you only have to count the other 60-65% that night.
And so that may allow for earlier results to be recorded. I don't know. We'll see.
Do they count the mail-in ballots prior to election? Do they already have those tallied by the time the polls close?
I'm embarrassed to admit I don't know. I don't know. I think they definitely will. Obviously, when the mail comes in, they put them in a stack somewhere. I don't know whether they're opened at that point. I don't think so. I think by statute they can't open them until that night. They can do it before the polls close. They can run them through the tabulators, but they can't do it before that, I don't believe. So again, they kind of start with a head start with, depending on how many people choose to use that. I'm a big believer, just for transparency's sake, I like to go to the polls and vote in person. So I will bring my unopened ballot with me and be able to vote that day. But there are people who, for very good reasons, find the mail piece to be a little bit more convenient. It all began with our service people overseas, and that's how that whole absentee ballot, you request it, and it takes a certain amount of time to get it from wherever they are serving our country back here. And now we've opened it up to the point where, and again, I think you could make a case for some issues with this, but everybody that is still on a checklist gets a ballot. I don't know how many of those don't ever get opened and you get thrown away, or whether there are people that kind of go around and fill them out and then mail them back in. It's a little disturbing to me, but that's why I'm a big believer in, if you want to vote and you're able, and there's people that are, have disabilities that they can't, I think you ought to be able to go in and vote in person.
Yeah, I like the mail-in, and I like going in person. And one of the things I like about the mail-in ballot is you can absorb it and read it carefully, because some of the items on there, it's almost like they're written in Old English. Yeah. And you're not always sure, am I voting yes on this? Does that mean it's going through, or does it mean it's not going through? I can't really tell. So it's nice to be able to sit at home and read it over and over again. And so. But I like to go in person and joke around with the folks at the polls.
Sure.
And,
usually there's some good baked goods too.
Yeah. I'll have to mention that at Rollin Town. I haven't seen any baked goods there recently. But.
No, the last few times I haven't. You're right. And so you and I are both voting in Rutland Town. Yeah, interesting. So that election coverage will be November 5th at 7, and it goes sometimes 2 or 3 hours.
Right. I leave that up to Tom, of course, because he's in the hot seat. So typically when data stops trickling in is when Tom will bring it to a close. And we do get some information overnight that comes to us that we'll try to put on the next day. But I leave that up to Tom. If he runs out of steam and we're not getting enough for him to talk about, he'll bring it to a close. But it does usually go till at least 9. We'll get a good steady amount of information until 9 o'clock.
And I think by then most of the, I don't want to call them major races, but the ones that are top of the ticket, I guess you could say, will have been decided, and people will know before they go to bed probably. I'm not sure about the national one, but that's not anything that you folks will be doing. It's you're involved with just the state, and even more so with Rutland County. The national one could take quite a bit of time. I mean, you listen to people and they say it's going to be a nail biter and it's very close and et cetera. I don't know. Nobody knows until the day of the election. Yeah.
And of course, our results are unofficial. I mean, we've always been very, very close to what the actual numbers are, but of course, we're just doing it for information only, and it's unofficial. And I am trying to work with the state to get an RSS feed up to tick across the screen the statewide results as we're doing our results.
Yeah.
And it's been 1 year where it worked very well, but the last couple of years we haven't been able to get it to work. And I don't know if it's a WCAX ticker works in our server, but I can't get the state one to work. So I'm not sure what the story is on that. But
interesting.
Yeah.
We're talking to Tom Leypoldt from PEGTV. And we are going to take our first break here on Catamount Community Connection. When we come back, I want to talk about some of the 3 channels that we talk about. I guess we're still using kind of an old name, if you will, a reference point. But I want to talk about some of the things that are on maybe some of the other channels that people are not aware of, that they might listen to and watch if they only knew. And then we'll talk about funding as well when we come back here on Catamount Community Connection. Welcome back to Catamount Community Connection. our 1 hour weekly, our weekly 1 hour show here at Catamount Radio. I'm Brian Collamore and the host of the show, and we're tickled to have Tom Leypoldt from PEGTV with us today. We talked a little bit about what you all hopefully enjoyed last night, which was the Halloween parade and PEGTV's coverage of that. That is available, by the way, on archival ways to do it. You can find it again and watch it over and over if you want. And then we start talking about the election coverage, which will be coming up on November 5th. But I want to have Tom focus a little bit on the three offerings, if you will, the channels, and what might be available that sort of nobody knows about, kind of thing. Are there shows and things that if people only knew, they'd probably watch?
Right. As you know, Brian, the station is divided up into three separate channels, and that's where you get the acronym PEGTV. There's a public channel, education channel, and a government channel. And the public channel is basically anyone that wants to come in and voice their opinion or record a show. We have church services on there. One of the most popular shows over the years has been Pet Partners, where that crew will come in, Beth and Stephanie will come in and showcase pets that are up for adoption, and that show's been on for going on probably 25 years now. So, and then basic anything that anybody that has an idea, a lot of our field producers will cover car shows. If you're a nonprofit and you have an event coming up or an annual meeting, give us a call. We can't always accommodate, but we do like to help out the nonprofits. That's what we're there for. We like to get that information on and those events on. We have some very talented field producers. Greg, Chris, and Bill have been at it for years, and they love it. They love going out in the community and getting these events, Relay for Life, things like that, the Walk for Alzheimer's, and just entertaining events. Chris just recently did a thing at Wilson Castle, which is allegedly haunted, and I believe that it is after looking at the footage. So the public channel is a showcase of the community. The education channel is school board meetings and school leaders that want to come in and sit down and interview their staff and talk about things that are going on at the schools. It's also the channel where the school sports lands on, and Chris and Greg do a lot of sports coverage. It's changed a little bit in the recent years, but the schools that let us come in, we do like to cover their games, and we like to cover a wide variety of different schools we focus on throughout the county. And of course, as you know, the government channel is the municipal meetings, Alderman, Rutland Town Select Board, Brandon Town Select Board, Clarendon Select Board, all of that stuff, election coverage, anything that's produced by a political candidate or someone that's currently in office will fall under that category. So it's something for everybody, really, on either one of the channels or all three of the channels. And like you said, if you can't watch it on the channel, we do put mostly all of our content on YouTube, as long as it's not some kind of copyright infringement. And of course, YouTube scans for factual information, so if it's not factual, they won't let us put it up. But yeah, we try to disseminate it quickly and as fast as we can.
So the other piece, and again, I sound much older than I feel sometimes. Back in the good old days, at once upon a time, there were only a certain number of channels on our local cable, and PEGTV had three of them, and they were all in the low numbers, if you will. I mean, they were double numbers, but so if you wanted to watch Channel 3, you watch Channel 3. If there was 5, you watch 5. When Comcast came in, it changed it quite a bit, and I think maybe there are still people that are not up to speed about where you are on the cable.
That's correct. And you go back to the real early days when we were located on Pine Street before I was working here, it was Channel 8. And then the studio moved from Pine Street to what used to be the Adelphia Cable Building. It's now the Xfinity Building.
That's right.
We used to be in the basement there, and that's where they changed it to Channel 15. And we were there for a long time. We moved to the Stafford Technical Center. In 1999, we took on the two more channels, which was Channel 20 and 21. And then a few years back, Comcast changed our numbers and put us in the upper tier. So now it's 1075, 1085, and 1095, which is kind of hard for people to remember, and it's a little bit of a mouthful to say. And that's why we strive to put on content that people want to see, because it makes them seek us out. Because we're not next to NBC anymore, so when you're flipping through channels, we're not amongst the top three, big networks. So you do have to do a little bit of work to find us. As Joe Tilden used to like to say, I got to do some finger aerobics to, so that's kind of what it is. You got to hit those 4 digits. Yeah. Or if you have a voice remote, you can just say PEGTV or channel 1075, 85, or 95 into remote, and it'll find it. Another thing I want to add, if you live inside Rutland County, our services are free. If you want to record a game that we can't get to and start a collection of your teenagers' high school sports, you can certainly do that. Come in and take a quick course. We'll show you how to use the field equipment, and you can go out and record games or any event that's a nonprofit that fits our guidelines. That's what we're here for, to give the community a voice, and it's free. We get our funding from the cable company, as you know, and some funding from the state of Vermont. So all of these services that we offer to the public are free.
Yeah. We'll get to the funding in just a little bit down the road. I want to mention, in case people feel like, oh gosh, that camera must weigh, 85 pounds and it'll be hard to move around. Whenever I see Greg McCormick, the camera is like so much smaller and better than it was at one time, that it really can be a single person operation. He does a great job, and you can do just the video and have somebody else talk if you want, or either way, maybe you talk and somebody else talks as well. So the equipment is really far superior to what it was at one time.
Yeah, isn't that always the case? When it gets to me past my time, everything gets better. Yeah. So now that I'm in the office and I don't get out in the field as much, all the equipment's better and more fun and easier to use.
Yeah.
But yeah, it has, and we try to keep up with state of the art. And we're trying to help the towns too with permanent installations. Because I think it was S55 that got passed, where you have to record the meetings now. And
right.
We're trying to help the towns out with that. But yeah, the equipment's easy. You can even put it in automatic, and the camera's smart enough to understand what you kind of want. And the footage looks beautiful. It's HD quality broadcast. And of course, Greg's got years of radio experience, so he knows how to talk it up on the game. So, yep. And we're getting a lot of positive feedback from what we're doing now, and it makes me feel good. I mean, yeah. We're completing our mission statement, and we're getting some good positive response from it.
You're probably old enough to remember, it was probably true for Channel 5 and but Channel 3 was what I was remembering here. They used, if they took some video of whatever event it was, the reporter had to meet the Vermont Transit bus in time for that video to be headed up to Burlington, where someone picked it up off the bus and then processed it so that it would make the Channel 5 or Channel 3 news at 6 o'clock, for instance. So it had to be on the bus by like 3, and there were always problems if the bus got delayed or something. Now, obviously, that's long gone. But those were. I'm thinking of John Gladding, who was the reporter back then. And you mentioned doing your own stuff. Jerry Munger's name comes to mind as someone that really went out of his way to take care of people with the sports and your kids playing sports.
Yeah, that's true, and he's one of our Hall of Famers. And if you notice on YouTube and on the air, we lucked out last year. A member of the school board in Rutland said, you still have a lot of boxes down in the basement of Longfellow building. And I had forgotten, because when we moved from the cable company to Stafford, we didn't have any storage, and Dr. Brothers like, well, put some stuff in the basement, we don't mind. And I forgot all about them. So the stuff's been down there for 25 years. Well, we went down to get it because it sounded like the school board didn't want it down there anymore. And Rich went with me, and we started, putting it all in a dumpster. And then I came upon this box of sports, and I'm like, you know what? Maybe I'll try to salvage this and put a couple of them on the air. And it started out, I was just going to keep the Rutland MSJ games because they were huge. Mm-hmm. But then I'm like, well, let's try to keep all of it. And there's still some old equipment at the station that I was able to hook up and marry to the new equipment so I could digitize all the tape recordings. And slowly putting all of that stuff on YouTube, and we actually play it on the channels as well. But Jerry has done probably well over 1,000 games for us. And right now I'm in the middle of the peak of his contribution. And almost every game that I'm putting up in YouTube was produced by Jerry Munger, and he was phenomenal at it because he could actually, like Greg is doing, he could do the camera and the voice at the same time, and I could never do that. I could do the camera and have somebody commentate, or I could commentate, but I can't do both. And Jerry did it for so long that he followed the kids in their youth games, and by the time they got to high school, he knew all their names. So when he was talking the games, he would say all their names and have them down. It was a tremendous contribution to us. Yeah. And I'm glad I kept all those games. For some reason, I serial numbered them all and kept them in storage. And his are on DVD, so we're playing them in a DVD player and then burning them into a digital converter. But it's time consuming, but it's well worth it. And I almost can't go anywhere without someone telling me how much they enjoy watching those Rewind Sports games. Yeah. And you're in a couple of the hockey ones as a referee.
So, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I'm sure people are still yelling at me for a call I either made or didn't make. Yeah. It is amazing the technology and how it's advanced. It makes you sort of wonder, 20 years from now, what will all of this be like? Will it be even more compact in terms of a camera, or getting the signal back? Vermont has got challenges with the internet because of the geography of the state. We have high mountains and low valleys, and they don't necessarily get along well together, if you will. So it just makes me wonder where we might be headed.
Right. Yeah, and it really has improved to the point where it has made a lot of things easier. Of course, when the internet goes down, of course, you're dead in the water. You can't do anything. But I remember back in the old days when we were doing the Halloween parade, I would always miss a float at one point or another because we had tape. And at some point, you ran out of tape and you had to put a new tape in. And during something like that, it always seemed like it took me half an hour to get the old tape out and the new tape in and then get recording again. And we always would miss something, and they'd call and say, well, how come you didn't get such and such? And I'm like, well, the camera, the tapes only last an hour, and you got to switch them out. And so now we don't have to worry about that because it's all SD card or internal memory on board, and you have hours on end where you don't have to worry about it. So, and the editing is better. That's another thing I wanted to add. If you bring in something and don't really feel like you have the time to edit, the staff will kind of take your notes and try to do it the way you would want it done, because that's very time consuming as well as the post-production part of it. So.
Yeah. I'm going back to radio days here when you mentioned the taping. So I can remember being in a studio here with two huge reel-to-reel tapes. Ampex was the brand name, and they would be like 7 or 10-inch reels, so they would only go for a certain amount of time. And the way that we would edit would be a splice. And it was acetate tape, and you'd put it down with a razor blade, and you cut it, and then you'd put these little pieces of white, and then masking tape, but editing tape, I guess. And that was how you brought things together. And now, of course, it's all digital, and it's all contained in the studio here. So it's so much different. Cartridge tapes used to have, that's where you put your commercials, and you manually had to hit the button in order for the thing to go. Right. And all of that's way, way, way gone now. Yeah. And I remember fighting it when it first came in, too. Yeah,
me too. We have the old equipment, like I said, that we've been using. If anybody is curious to see what it looked like, because we used to have that 3/4 inch stuff that you put in this big giant deck, and some of the games were on that. So there is a deck down there that it still works. If anybody's interested in taking a look, they can come down and tour the studio at any time. But actually, when I interned at WJJR, they were still doing that splicing tape, and I'm like, I think I'm going to go into television.
We're talking to Tom Leypoldt from PEGTV, and happy to have him aboard with us. We've got maybe about 20 minutes left. So let's talk a little bit about how you get funded. And most people, maybe they don't. I don't know. It's kind of like the electric bill. Unless you look really closely at the itemized portion of your bill, maybe people aren't aware. But if you're on the cable, you're helping that. You're helping your company stay alive, paying salaries and all that. And then there is a certain amount of state funding, and hopefully it's making a difference. I know you have sort of a consortium of different public access groups throughout the state, and they come in and lobby for certain things. But Rutland itself seems to be, at least from what I can tell, in pretty good shape and one of the leading groups in the whole state.
Yeah, that is true. And, cable is still viable, but it's not as prominent as it used to be. And, of course, there's people using alternative ways to see their footage and their news and things. So we get our funding from 5% of Comcast's annual gross. It's called a franchise fee, and that is a line item on your cable bill. So 5% of Comcast's annual revenue goes to funding PEGTV. Is same with VTEL. We're on the VTEL network as well, and it's the same percentage. And because the franchise fees have dipped a little bit, the Vermont Access Network, which is the umbrella network for all of the stations in Vermont, and there's 24 of them throughout the state, have lobbied the state of Vermont for additional money to counteract the dip in funding, and the state granted that. So we're very thankful for that too, because we want to help and stay viable. But Rutland has not been quite as affected as some of the other stations. So. And I think that has a lot to do with the terrain. A lot of times satellite dishes don't work well, and everybody wants to hang on to their cable. In fact, I've heard from some of the Comcast technicians that when they go service in other areas, folks will ask them how do they get the public access in Rutland. So that's a nice badge to have.
Yeah. I guess I would liken that to, in the Agency of Transportation, is the gas tax, and that funds lots of different things like salaries for people that work in the agency, roads, construction, bridges, whatever. But as the electrification of automobiles and trucks begins to, grow a little bit, I don't think it's growing dramatically every year, but it does grow a little bit. So the fewer vehicles that are on the road that use gasoline, the gas tax dips. And there's a little bit of a hole, if you will, that they have to fill. So we've been trying in the legislature to figure out what is a appropriate sort of balancing act. Do you charge the folks that are running hybrids or all electric vehicles a fee when they buy them, or is it when they register them again? Annually, how do you make up for the decrease in the gas tax? Because it is going down. There's no doubt about that. It may not be as dramatic as some people might think, but it is getting less and less every year. And so we have to look to those other sources. I mean, those vehicles are heavier because of the batteries than most conventional vehicles. And so how do you make up for that? And right now they don't pay anything. But they're still using the same roads. Right. So we have to. So I think maybe it's not a great analogy, but I think it sort of fits.
No, I think that's appropriate. And I will have to add that it's 5% of the video portion of your bill. It's not 5% of the whole bill. And this generation doesn't really watch TV, but they're watching our content on other devices. I checked this morning on YouTube. In the last 28 days, we've had over 15,000 hits on our YouTube content. So it's not that they're not watching PEGTV anymore. They're just not watching it as much on TV. So it's that. It's just that media landscape is changing, and we're trying to adapt to that. Of course, you need funding still. So if we're not getting funding from the internet stuff, but we're still providing that content, people get to watch it, but we're not getting any revenue from that. So there is a little bit of a dance there to try to figure out how do we move forward in the future. Should Comcast or VTEL change their format and it switches over to something other than cable, which it's hard to believe that it won't, because the way technology changes these days, it's constant. I mean, if I wasn't in the field, your knowledge would be obsolete quick, because things change so fast that you're like, wow, it's really amazing to see how far we've come in 30 years.
Yeah.
I mean, to think that in 1995, a season of sports would take up a shelf on a wall of VHS tapes, and now you can fit that in a device that's in the size of a pack of gum.
Yeah. Amazing.
It is.
So the additional help that the state gave, maybe you can help inform people how that works. Was it a sliding scale, or was it just a lump number? And is it, going to need to be updated at some point?
It's a lump number, and I think how it worked was they send the check to Van, and a station in the van network delegates it out to the rest of the stations, and I think it's the same number for everybody. They may adjust that this coming year and try to help the stations that are bigger or however. I'm not sure how it's going to work. But we've been using that money to upgrade towns. Because what we do essentially is lug equipment back and forth to each meeting, and that's becoming an old model. So for the rest of my days as executive director, I would like to start enhancing towns and getting equipment there and leaving it there. So if there's something that they want to cover that's a meeting that we can't get somebody to, at least there's a camera and some microphones and a mixer that they can put the camera on a wide shot and hit record, and they can record whatever they want. And we, as you know, we've done that to the Rutland City Board of Aldermen chambers and the school board chambers at Longfellow, and the town of Pollitt. We're actually finishing up today. The company that we're using is finishing their upgrade today, and I picked them because they're the furthest away. So, Bill usually lugs equipment all the way to Pollitt and comes back, and that's a 45-minute drive. And so if we can have stuff stay there and him just, meeting's over, I can leave. It's just a lot more efficient and convenient. And like I said, they can record meetings if they want when we're not there. So.
Yeah, I would assume there's a certain amount of wear and tear on the equipment by, as careful as people like to be, you still get bumped every now and then or something happens to it. So that makes a lot of sense. I hope that it's not, prohibitively expensive to do that. But if you see a town hall or a library, wherever the meeting is, and can buy the equipment and leave it there, and the folks there will take good care of it.
Yeah, and the problem we run into, because there's 27 towns in Rutland County, and we would like to cover all their meetings, but we just don't have the person power, and they almost always meet on Monday or Tuesday. So that's a big problem. If you have a lot of towns meeting on the same night, you just don't have the people. I can't hire 27 people to cover a meeting on Monday. So if we can put the power in the hands of the town, and they could submit, there's Dropbox now, so you don't even have to deliver the footage. You can just put it in Dropbox, and we can grab it there and put it on the air. It's just so much more efficient. And a lot of towns are still using Zoom. They'll just record their meeting in Zoom and give it to us, so you're still seeing Zoom meetings on the air. And I don't think that's ever going to stop. I think it's become so convenient for people that they're just going to keep doing Zoom.
We're talking to Tom Leypoldt from PEGTV, and we need to take our second break here on Catamount Community Connection. We'll be right back. Welcome back to our final segment today on Catamount Community Connection. I'm Brian Collamore. With me today is Tom Leypoldt from PEGTV, and we've talked about a lot of different things. Hopefully everybody enjoyed the Halloween parade. If you missed it and want to see it again, just go to the website, and Tom will talk about that and how you might want to navigate to the Halloween parade to see that again. We talked about the election coverage, which is coming up November 5th. Tom Donahue will be the anchor that night. And we should probably mention which channel that will be on, Tom, so that people can be tuning in for election coverage. And then we talked a little bit about the funding that is necessary to run this very worthwhile program. And some of it comes from your cable bill, and some of it comes from the state. Let's talk a little bit about, and we haven't mentioned this yet, the cooking studio.
Yeah, we actually have one of our studios is a full-on kitchen that works. It's real. So if we like to come in, and if you have a family recipe that you want to hand down for generations, there's no better way to do it than to come in and record it. Record the cooking show and talk about how it gets made. And through the magic of television, no matter what it is, you can make it in half an hour. And even if it doesn't taste good, it doesn't matter because it's on TV and no one will know. But we've had, through the years, many people come in and do cooking shows. Andrea Taravello was one. He does a lot of Italian dishes he comes in and does, which are delicious. I always try to tell myself, don't eat before you go to the gym. But when he's here and does a cooking show, I have to try it out before I go. Over the years, we've had a lot of people, and those are very popular. People like to watch other people cook. And we have multiple cameras in that studio as well. So there's a lot of ways you can watch that and enjoy it. Even we had one lady a few years ago just come in with her daughter and show her how to make hot chocolate. And those things are just fun. Yeah. So, and speaking of the website you mentioned, I do want to add that we just revamped our website. It's brand new. And one of the functions that we've added is you used to be able to only watch one channel at a time on it, but we upgraded with 2 brand new encoders. So at any time you can go to our website and watch what's playing on any of the 3 channels.
And what's the website address?
PEGTV.com.
Okay.
Yeah. And election night footage and live coverage is going to be on channel 1085, the government channel.
Okay. This may... I think you can answer right off the top of your head. I should have asked you at the beginning. Any funny moments, any sort of bloopers that you might remember? I think we did this the first time you and I talked, and I didn't realize it'd been a year ago, Tom. We've known each other for a long time, see each other at the gym and just out and about. But any kind of funny things that you can remember that are airable here to let people know?
Yeah, we've had quite a few funny things. Of course, working 20 years with Mike Valentine, every day we were laughing about something, but a few things really come to mind. And just recently I was talking to a guy that's in the political arena, and just to be fair, I won't mention, but when he went on the air to do his show, he accidentally introduced himself as the chairperson of, and he said the wrong party. So we had to cut. He cut immediately. He said, none of that. Don't put that on the air. Another one, technical difficulty or not funny at the time, but when you look at it after, sometimes it is funny. And back when we were talking about having to use those big old tapes, we had an hour-long debate one time between 2 candidates, and I had inadvertently put in a half-hour tape. So halfway through the debate, the tape ran out. And they were right in the thick of it, and I had to walk out in the studio totally embarrassed. And it's like, excuse me, we have to stop. I need to change tapes because I didn't put a long enough tape in. So it was a little bit embarrassing. And, of course, one of my favorite ones of all time is when Bernie Sanders came in. It was, as you know, you're allowed to state your platform and talk about your views, but you're not allowed to say vote for me on the air because it's considered a political commercial, which we're not allowed to do. Mm-hmm. And back when Bernie Sanders used to utilize us quite a bit, he came in to do that. He came in to give his platform, and Mike said to him, just remember, Bernie, you're not allowed to say vote for me on the air. And Bernie looked at him full on seriously. Is it okay if I say don't vote for the other guy? And I'm like, wow, what a clever response that is. Yeah. But, there's been so many people that I've met over the years, and it's just been great to know. Dr. Leypoldt, he was just a hilarious guy. I'll never forget, he was doing Raha hockey for us, and he was so animated. He was becoming a superstar on the air. And I'll never forget, one time I went into Ben & Jerry's and I had a PEGTV shirt on, and the girl behind the counter says, "You work at PEGTV? You must know Dr. Leypoldt." And it's like, wow, and that's community access at its best right there,
You mentioned Bernie Sanders. I've told this story, maybe not on this show before, but certainly on the air. I'm down at the far end of town. I think I was going into Staples, as a matter of fact. So a fairly large parking lot there. And I do have Senate plates on my vehicle. And I pulled into the parking lot and began to get out of the car. And I noticed this gentleman from quite a distance was running over, waving his arms, and said, and he got close enough so he could see who it was. And in a very disappointed tone, he said, "Well, you're not Bernie Sanders." And I said, "No, I'm not, sir. I'm the state senator, not the U.S. senator." So that was one of those funny moments that happens every now and then.
A couple of years ago at the Paramount, I was waiting to get into a show, and this woman had approached me, and she said, "I have to tell you that my son, who has Down syndrome, really, really enjoys your commentary on the Halloween parade." Because me, I get full of foolish one-liners and just, jokes that makes people's eye roll.
Well, you were a comedian at one point, right?
And, she said, "My son really, really enjoys your little one-liners during the parade." And I said, "Oh, that's good to hear. I'm glad, and I hope he keeps watching." And she says, "But I do have to be honest with you. He thinks you're Terry J." I said, "Well, that's fine. Terry J's been a role model for me. So if he wants me to be Terry J, I'll be Terry J."
So we've got about 5 minutes left. We talked about the cooking studio. If you have anything you want to come in and cook on the air, do that. Get a hold of the folks at PEGTV and set that up. I know you're in the House Center, and wanted to at least thank somebody who, because you just re-upped the rent, right?
Yeah, we just renewed the lease with the Giancola Corporation. And I really want to thank Dave Giancola for his his patience and concern on that. He really has accommodated us. It's a beautiful building, and they really have taken, the Giancola family has really taken good care of us there. And plenty of parking. It's just a beautiful studio. In fact, many people have commented this is probably the best one in the state of Vermont, and we do owe that. And Joe Giancola early on was very instrumental in that. He let us design the building in any way we wanted. So it is a very nice studio. There's a kitchen studio on one end and a talking head studio on the other, and it's sometimes both of them are going at the same time. And it's just a great building. So thank you to Dave Giancola. We're going to be there for a few more years at least. So, and hopefully it'll take me to retirement because I don't know how to do anything else. So.
And it's building number 24 at the Howe Center in Rutland. And if you want to come in, you offer tours and even free pens, right?
Yeah, you can come in and get a PEGTV pen or a PEGTV t-shirt. We have PEGTV hats. Come in and take a look at the studio, and just if you ever wondered how it's done, we'll give you a full tour and show you the control room. Telephone number 802-747-0151, and a real person will pick up the phone during business hours, and you can just schedule and come in. We'll actually accommodate that very nicely.
And again, just to reiterate, for those of you that will be interested, and I'll say it's the only place you'll be able to get election coverage instantaneously, if you will. The newspaper will have whatever they can get available the next day, but I'm sure if it goes, and I don't know how they staff for election night, but they have a certain deadline. It's usually, I think, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock on the afternoon in order to make the paper the next day. So they may be able to do that differently for elections, but certainly because radio doesn't do it anymore, and there aren't any other TV facilities locally that will be providing the coverage. So, Tom Donahue, the pressure's all on you, and that will be channel 1085 on Tuesday, November 5th, if you want to find out, especially on a local level, who won what race, and I'm sure the major networks will be on long after you guys have gone home for the night with the presidential election, but you're going to concentrate pretty much just on Rutland County, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And any other outskirt towns in the county that want to send us their data, we'll be glad to read it.
Okay. So that's 1085. PEGTV.com if you want to find out about a particular program or event like the Halloween parade, and you didn't get a chance to see it with the live coverage last night, or you want to see it again, there's a way to look things up, right? Right.
We have an archive on YouTube that the Halloween parade will be on, and we'll certainly share the link on Facebook and Instagram, and we keep up on all that too, social media. So it'll be easy to find, and we'll play it a lot. It'll probably be on the air every day for a while because it's very popular.
So I haven't asked you the question, but you and I work out at the same facility. And what are you benching these days?
Well, last Monday I put up 315, but yesterday I couldn't do it. So I guess it depends on what I eat for lunch.
Yeah. Is that your all-time high?
All-time high is 405.
No kidding.
I will never be able to do that again.
Wow.
Because the next day, everything hurt, and I'm just too old to have to leave that to the young guys.
Well, you must be, 40?
40? Yeah. I think you had almost another score to that.
Well, you don't look it, Tom.
Thank you. Well, you don't look your age either.
Well, thank you.
I think that's why we spend so much time at the gym.
Yeah. It's a good thing to do. I try to walk every day, too, a couple, 3 miles. And they tell you that that's a good way to stay in shape.
Yeah, and I bike a lot, especially with weather like this. I like to get on the mountain bike.
Well, we have been very fortunate this fall. Again, as we record this on Tuesday, the 22nd, we're looking at 70 degrees. In fact, I think I even heard 73 or 4 today, and then again tomorrow. And you're right, this coming weekend, again, by the time you hear this, it'll already have happened. It's going to begin to get a little bit cooler.
Right.
And then I think it's the early part of November with the time change. I want to say it's probably the 2nd or 3rd. Probably the 3rd.
Yeah.
Because that's a Sunday. So we fall behind, spring ahead, so we'll gain a little bit in the morning, but of course driving home at night it'll be pitch black. Not too far away either.
It'll feel like 9 o'clock and it'll only be 5:30.
I know. I really look forward to the shortest day of the year, because then I know from that point on we're gaining maybe a minute or two a day, and maybe that's why I think my favorite month now is May, because the sun comes up now, in that month by about 5 in the morning, and and you have a long day. It doesn't go down until 8 at night. It's just perfect. So anyway, hopefully we'll have you back. I won't wait another year to have you come back, because it's always interesting to find out what's happening at PEGTV. I wish you the best. Happy holidays, and stay in touch.
I will, Brian. It's always a pleasure, and I certainly appreciate your support at the State House, because I know you rally for us up there. So,
well, I try to get the right things done, and this is something I believe in a lot. And so if you need to have any further assistance, please, you know how to get a hold of me, and we'll see what the election results bring, and we'll do what we can to continue to help.
Thank you very much.
All right.
It's a pleasure.
Tom Leypoldt from PEGTV. We will see all of you next week on Catamount Community Connection.